Interior Minister Adebayo says he would not resign his job despite the recent spate of prison breaks in the country. And PDP leaders hold a valedictory session for the Secondus-led PDP NWC, although in Secondus' absence, or seems set to usher in the Senator Uche Secondus-led team. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimalo in Abuja. Today, President Buhari chaired a weekly Federal Executive Council meeting at the Presidential Villa in Abuja. After the meeting, members of the cabinet spoke to journalists on the outcome against the backdrop of the frequent attacks on correctional facilities across the country. The Minister of Interior, Mr. Adebayo, says that it is not enough to compel him to resign. Adebayo insists that the successful attacks is not owing to a lack of intelligence or preparedness, but a number of factors. Take a listen to him.
As to whether it calls for my resignation, I still don't see any need for that, because it is not for lack of preparedness that the attacks were successful. No. If people are to, no, even the men in uniform, yes, the hazard of their job could lead to their death, but none of them wanted to die. We are upping our game, and we will not allow, we will prevent any such opportunistic attack and even make it impossible. And that is what the state must do.
That's the Minister of Interior, Adebayo, speaking on some of the prison breaks and the attacks on the correctional facilities across in some parts of the country. Let's now check out some of your political roundup stars.
Thank you so much.
As the political appointments continue to pour in Edo State, the state governor, Godwin Obaseki, is insisting that he's not interfering with the nominations list from his party, the People's Democratic Party. According to him, the PDP is not a secret cult and every member has a say in party activities. Governor Obaseki made the comments during the swearing-in ceremony of new political aides from Edo North Senatorial District in Auchi, Esako West local government area of the state.
The way they gave me the list is the way they published it. I did not add one name or remove one name from the list.
As the momentum increases ahead of the 2023 elections, the South-South region of Nigeria is also putting its best foot forward for the presidential contest. Sergeant Chidi Awuse, one of the old-breed politicians in River State, is asking Governor Nyesom Wike to join the race as a South-South candidate.
What we have seen over the period he came in, we've not seen it in politics since 1999. Still PDP. But PDP in River State have corrected it now, through Wike now. Over time, they've corrected their error in River State. That's very difficult for any party to attempt to River State. It's not possible. But Wike has transformed the state beyond anyone's expectation. No local government area in River State that has no project properly funded and properly executed. None.
The coalition of Northern Groups, CNG, and Students' Wing of the Northeast Chapter convened a stakeholders meeting in Gombe State to discuss the state of Nigerian nation, particularly the place and future of northeastern Nigeria in its current disposition, and its future with the federal and state government's ratification of another regime of what they call appalling, cruel, and outrageous increase in the pump prices of fuel to 340 naira per litre.
We finally warn that this latest increase, if allowed, will quite possibly represent the biggest cumulative threat
And the senator represented Cross River Northern Senatorial District, Jarigwe Agum, has charged politicians across the nation to stop using ethnicity to boost their political gains. According to him, lots of insecurity are surrounded by politics of domination, oppression, and exploitations, while fairness, equity, and justice can promote peace and bring about development.
The Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, PLAC, led by the Executive Director, a constitutional lawyer and rights activist Clement Nwankwo, has asked that President Buhari should assent to the Electoral Act amendment be put before him about 20 days ago. Nwankwo, in a statement today, says assenting to the electoral bill will be the single most important legacy of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration. PLAC stated that President Muhammadu Buhari had expressed his interest in bequeathing a reformed electoral system to the country as part of his legacy, especially in the light of the fact that he benefited from improvements made to the electoral system arising from the recommendations of the Chief Justice Muhammad Lawal Uwais Electoral Reform Committee. He went further to say that a few interests, including individual governors or in groups, have raised a specific concern regarding the mode of selection of candidates for elections as passed by the committees, which is direct primaries. Only continuing in the statement, PLAC noted that while there may be interest with different views about the electoral bill, it was important to point out that these interests had the opportunity to make their input during the legislative process, especially at a call for memoranda and a public hearing. Let's stick with issues relating to the law. The Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Tanko Muhammad, says that Nigeria's judiciary has had enough embarrassment of its judicial officers and would not take kindly a repeat of any ugly treatment from security operatives. He warned that the silence of the judiciary should never be mistaken for stupidity or weakness. Justice Muhammad was speaking at the 2021-2022 new legal year in Abuja held at the Supreme Court. The NBA President Olumide Akpata also shared his views on the state of the judiciary in Nigeria.
Still on a very sad note, I must say we were jolted with the embarrassing news of the invasion of the official residence of one of our brother justices, Honorable Justice Mary Peter Audley, on Friday the 29th of October 2021 by men suspected to be security operatives acting on a search warrant purportedly obtained from an Abuja magistrate court under questionable circumstances. I must make it known to all and sundry that we have had rough dosage of such embarrassments and harassments of our judicial officers across the country, and we can no longer take any of such shenanigans. The silence of the judiciary should never be mistaken for stupidity or weakness. By the nature of our work, we are conservative, but not conquered species, and it should not be pushed further than this by any individual, institution, or agency of government. With time, those taking the judiciary as a mere weakling will soon realize that it is from the calmest seas we often experience the fiercest storms. The time to oppress, suppress, and intimidate judicial officers is gone.
We must therefore be responsive and dynamic if we are to meet with the yearnings and aspirations of society that we seek to serve. My lords, this introspection we refer to must of necessity include taking another look at how judicial officers are appointed. This is a foundational issue. In this regard, permit me to make bold to say that there is nothing inherently wrong with appointing magistrates, chief registrars, and indeed the children and relatives of past or serving judicial officers as judges or justices of our courts, provided that they fulfill the constitutional requirements for such judicial office. It is, however, problematic where the selection process is considered by many, even by some, to be opaque, or not objective, or not open to scrutiny. We must therefore borrow a leaf from other jurisdictions by further opening up the process with a view to ensuring that anyone aspiring to this high office is subjected to a rigorous, transparent, and clearly defined process which will demonstrate his or her suitability for the office. This is the only way to silence the critics and restore the much needed public confidence in the process of selection of judicial officers.
All right. You heard some of the senior members of the Nigerian legal system talking about the chairman of the bench, and of course the president of the bar. Those are the leaders of the two divide in the Nigerian legal system. So, is the Nigerian judiciary weak, or something really is wrong or happening? The question is, even in the military era, there's one particular arm of government that is constant. That is the judiciary. The legislature might go, but the judiciary remains. It is the spine of any democratic society. So what is happening in Nigeria, especially when this question comes to play at the legal year celebration in Abuja? Let's get talking about it, everyone. Let's get some views on this. I'm being joined on the program by Mr. Johnson, Candid Johnson. He's a senior advocate of Nigeria. He joins us virtually from Lagos. Thank you so much. It's good to see you again, senior advocate. Let me begin by asking you straight up, is the judiciary being taken for granted, or it has just lost its teeth to fight for itself?
Thank you very much. I think that the statement by the Chief Justice in open court was quite remarkable. The judiciary is a political actor, that is obvious, but the action of the judiciary is really subtle. It's intended to be by virtue of the delivery of a product which has authority and which is fundamental to the stability of society. What disturbs me, frankly speaking, is that the Chief Justice would make what amounts to a declaration of war against institutions, against individuals, as he described them, who he says are challenging the independence and authority of the judiciary. That statement has to be made indicates to me that we have fallen into a very, very terrible state in the affairs of our country. And to answer your question in summary, that the judiciary has been rendered weak by a multiplicity of factors, some of which were referred to by the President of the Bar Association, including weakness in judicial appointments, but above all, weakness in the authority that comes to a judge by virtue of his dignity, by virtue of the quality of justice dispensed, the fairness, the accessibility. You see, judicial decision-making is a fundamental to democratic society, indeed to any society. And the authority of a judge comes from the effectiveness of the product that is delivered at the public expense. So that the Chief Justice has to scramble to indicate that the judiciary will hold its own is by itself an admission that it has fallen to a very terrible state.
Then that this is perhaps the lowest that the judiciary has fallen in years that we have experienced in our democratic process.
I think that's fairly put. I think that the incident that the Chief Justice referred to, the attack on the premises of a sitting justice, and the inability of the authorities of states to identify quickly and to take responsibility or impose accountability for what is a dastardly act, an astounding affront on the authority of an independent arm of government, and a terrible signal as to the respect that the government, the executive arm of government, holds the judiciary, and the fact that it does not consider the judiciary to be significant enough in any respect. I think it's difficult to avoid the conclusion that that event was an attempt to intimidate and to give such disrespect as to render the function of the judiciary ineffective. If the executive doesn't need the judiciary for any purpose, even though it's prescribed in the Constitution, they couldn't have made a better statement of that by that act, for which until today we have no accountability. As the Chief Justice said, a magistrate issued an order. He thought he was issuing it on behalf of the Attorney General. The Attorney General has been mumbling a series of inconsistent statements as to what happened and what did not happen. But it's quite clear from the tone of the comment made by the Chief Justice that they don't buy this succession of conflicting explanations and that they recognize that the judiciary is under attack. And the response is not just to declare war, but to ensure that they deliver a product which the public have confidence in. If the public has confidence in the effectiveness, the fairness, the accessibility of the justice delivery system, they will defend the judiciary, and the judiciary can hold up itself behind its dignity. To have to engage into a street fight is a serious loss of dignity, and dignity is the biggest protection of a judge.
To start stating the role of separation or the principle of separation of powers or the role of judiciary in a democratic process, of course, we know that when the judiciary is being taken for granted, a democratic process might fall on its face like a pack of cards. And perhaps going back to the principles and the concept of separation of powers that the French philosopher Montesquieu and John Locke developed this idea, they've looked at the dangers in why separation of powers need to hold sway. But as it stands right now, would you say that concept, the principle of separation of powers, is in jeopardy, or how would you describe the situation of things?
Well, the first thing to say is that you see the constitutional arrangement on which these principles are founded is a delicate balance of powers amongst a contesting series of powers and stakeholders in any country. When the Constitution prescribes the separation of powers, it is trying to impose checks and balances on the exercise of power by respective arms in order to preserve what is most important, the safety, the security, and the progress of the citizens of that environment. Now, these are so fundamental, and when we have a constitution, it's the conclusion I reach is that we pretend to believe in the rule of law and we pretend to believe in the efficacy of the constitution. Anytime an authority of government is questioned according to their behavior, they will refer to the Constitution. People who abhor and undermine the Constitution will say the Constitution provides this and the Constitution provides that. But the honor of the Constitution is in its spirit. It is a delicately balanced social and political contract. If it is not respected and regarded in its entirety, if the spirit of the Constitution is consistently undermined, then the foundations of our consent to be governed is going to break down. Back to Montesquieu and John Locke, who you referred to, the English Lord Acton made an aphorism which is quite famous in the common law. He said that power corrupts and all power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. When one branch of government attempts to seize absolute power and subverts the authority and power of others, it is concentrating power in its hands in a way that makes the entire democratic experiment risky and unstable. And what is going to happen is, as the Chief Justice today is confronting arms of government, other arms of government will recognize that the balance is not being maintained and they must contest for themselves. Ultimately, when these branches start to contest for themselves, the dignity, the authority, the pretense of democratic and constitutional government will fall apart because it becomes a sham. Once the shadow falls apart, then you and I will recognize that we have to be our own government. This collapse of governmental consent and the experiment of political democracy and constitutional democracy is a serious threat to our progress as a nation.
The description is very gory, considering what the impact might be in the nearest future, because this thing develops and it brews a very terrible situation. But to wrap up the conversation around the judiciary and its autonomy, one will wonder that the Order 10 signed by President Buhari is supposed to help give some power, to some teeth to the issue of autonomy. I don't know if that is working, but from your own point of view, how do we get out of this quagmire? How do you strengthen the judiciary?
Well, first of all, in any political contest, political will is something that drives activity. Political will is forced by the polity. An absolute ruler or a ruler who is limited by laws which he chooses to disobey will only be obliged to follow the law or follow the conditions and the rules of a constitutional arrangement if the public, the polity, force that will. So first of all these things that we recognize to be failures, to be threats to our democratic system, if Nigerians recognize that these are dangers to their way of life, to their safety, their security, and their progress, then Nigerians will rise to defend those institutions. If they believe in those institutions, they will defend them. If that is the case, there are many ways to strengthen the judiciary. Now, I gave you that preface because I recognize that unless there is a will, we can make solutions till we're blue in the face. But the autonomy of the judiciary, you refer to the president giving an executive order. And I find that in itself self-serving and dangerous. The idea that the president needs to give an order directing agencies of government to carry out the Constitution is by itself problematic, because every official is sworn to uphold the Constitution, and the Constitution provides for the judiciary to be impartial and independent. But efforts that are being made, denying them of funds, intimidating them by physical force, a variety of measures, which many totalitarian governments take historically, are intended to undermine the constitutional arrangements of the country. And people who do this believe that they can exercise absolute power, that they can govern without consent. The fact of the matter is that history teaches that whether it comes by way of the vote, whether it comes by the way of silence, whether it comes by the way of ignorance or indolence, you cannot govern without the people's will. You can do so for some time by the deployment of violence, by the deployment of deception, and you can protect your power and its corrupt benefits by means of that, the spirit that you create, but it will fail. And this is what history teaches. This is why I recognize we're in such a dangerous position. If we continue to pretend that we're operating a constitutional democracy without defending it, if we continue to allow powers to be eroded from institutions that are intended to guarantee our safety, our security, and our progress, then we will get to the stage where we have to face ourselves directly, and the entire pretense and the protections of our Constitution will be unavailing. It's a dangerous situation, in my opinion.
Very dangerous indeed, but we most sincerely thank you, Mr. Yemi Kandi Johnson, the Senior Advocate of Nigeria, who's been speaking with us on this matter. We do hope that something is done, at least to give us the kind of democracy that we hope for. Thank you so much indeed for your time tonight.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Now, let's tell you about a political coalition group, the National Consultative Forum, who has challenged the political system presently operating in Nigeria by warning it of plans to start up a shadow cabinet, will act as opposition voice and challenge the government on developmental issues. Well, 2023 is around the corner, and we're hearing all of these. What does this mean? They had a press conference earlier today in Abuja. Take a listen to some part of their conversation.
The third force movement can no longer keep quiet while the country slowly slides into collapse and anarchy. Set to rescue Nigeria by providing alternative solutions to various national trauma in our country. Leaders of conscience under the umbrella of the Third Force Movement, initiated by the National Consultative Front, NC Front, is again compelled to intervene in the national growing misrule and national confusion by setting up a formidable national shadow government to provide alternative intervention and solutions to the problems of national governance in the various sectors of Nigerian political and economic endeavor. Consequently, we wish to use this medium to call on all well-meaning Nigerians across party lines and in broad civil society to embrace and support this historic shadow cabinet initiated by the National Consultative Front, NC Front.
So you heard them there. The agenda, they're putting up a shadow cabinet. But what does this mean? To what end is all of these idea? Let's get more on this. A member of the coalition, a lawyer, Mr. Wale Adewale, joins us now. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
What do you mean by a shadow cabinet? And what do you aim to achieve?
A shadow cabinet is a group of citizens or political actors who are not in government, but who are concerned enough to prepare and behave as if they're in government and find solutions, alternative solutions to the problems of the country. So what we mean to achieve is basically to let the Nigerian people not equate the hopelessness of the present government with the hopelessness of the entire nation. To say, well, this government is just not efficient or effective in many aspects. It doesn't mean that the solutions are not available. So it does not mean that if the government is unable to achieve something, and then it means that totally we don't have a solution. So we give alternative solutions to our governance issues. That's basically what we do.
So let's get the background. And you want to be in government,
Certainly.
but you're not in government.
Yeah.
So you are standing as opposition.
That's
You
correct.
don't have political platform, do you?
We do have a political platform. There is, of course, the difference between a political platform
and a political party.
A political party or a partisan platform. What we are trying to do is that the nature of our problems are political. Those who are in government only because of their engagement in politics. Most of the mistakes they make are the mistakes made by political powers conferred on them. These powers are given to them on a term-based basis. These are not powers inherent in them. A few years ago, President Buhari would be in Kaduna, in his house, as a private citizen, ruminating over issues. Today, he has presidential powers. Same thing with ministers and all of that. So what we are trying to remind the people is that it's obvious from within the government and outside that things are not going right. No one feels secure. There's poverty all over the land. There's proper evaluation of our economy will show that it's going down. So what do? We have to now come forward and say, take these solutions. Nigeria cannot be unfortunate that only the ministers appointed by President Buhari are the wisest people in Nigeria. Even if we were in doubt as to their wisdom before, the result of their 4, 5, 6 years in power has shown to us that they are not the best we can get. Now, but they are there by law. So what do? Instead of engaging in politics of taking advantage of their misfortune, we said, look, let us set up what they ought to be doing. If they are mismanaging the economy, let us come together and manage the economy.
You're setting up a government outside government?
Yes, because...
Is that legitimate?
It is legitimate. It is required by law.
Is it set in law? Under what part of our laws is that recognized?
Our law recognizes freedom of association, freedom of expression, and expression includes expression of opinion on policy. So, for example...
And including setting up a parallel government?
No, you are setting up a parallel cabinet, not a parallel government. For example, what you're doing is a shadow government. It's not parallel. For example, if you look at the way the parliament is designed, for example, it is assumed that those who have a certain view, which coincide with that of the government, will be with the government, and they'll be on one side. Those who have their own other ideas, solutions, and proposals, but who are not in government, will come up in parliament to oppose the government measures. That's why where they put a question in the parliament, they always ask...
That's indeed not very much established in our political scene here in Nigeria. Well, maybe in the British context, we've heard and seen that. So I'm wondering where that principle and concept comes from, and where exactly in our laws and any part of the bodies of laws that this idea of shadow cabinet is enshrined.
Okay, now this is it. For example, if you look at the fact that those who are occupying political offices do not understand democracy does not mean that they need to establish a tradition for us that will make us not to understand it. For example, when an issue is put up in parliament, there's always a motion and counter motion. There's always those who are for yea and those who are for nay. Now, what has happened is that the aye and nay have come together to just not have a bifurcation of alternatives. So we who are citizens, who are active, who know what politics is all about, think to ourselves, okay, what do we do? When we have seen a hopelessness on the street, we said we have a right to come together under the Constitution, then we have freedom of thought, and we have experience.
All right. Sorry, Mr. Adewale, we need to take a break. And when we come back, the idea is that you call yourself a third force.
Yep.
And you want to be in power.
Yep.
Is it the right way to go about it? I'm going to get some of your views on that when we return from this break. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. Mr. Adebayo Adewale, a lawyer and a member of the shadow cabinet that has been created by the Nigerian Consultative Forum. Thank you so much for coming. Should I call you Honorable Minister? Because as a cabinet member of the shadow cabinet, it does come to light that you've given yourself some level of power to formulate policy on behalf of those who are following you.
Obviously, everyone has that inherent power to formulate policy. The question of being in government or outside government, ideally, you ought to have policy ideas before you come to government. You will remember that when President Buhari came to power, and even previous government, they always lament that we never knew it was this bad. We didn't know what government was about. We didn't know what the problem was. We don't want to fall into that. What we are doing is to think ahead, because you must have alternatives to these problems. And many of these problems are very easy. So you don't become suddenly wise when you are sworn into government. You start to think about these things.
So you're preparing yourself.
Yes, these are the duties. It's the duties of political parties.
It's 2021, Mr. Adewale.
Yes.
And the question is, if you look at it, if you're going to seek elective offices or you want to get power, how do you hope to do that if you have not formed a political party yet?
There are political parties. We are not focusing, this aspect of our activity is not focusing on the politics side. It's focusing on the governance side. Everyone is worried and concerned about politics, 2023. But for those who are traveling between Lagos and the north, from Kaduna to Abuja, who are being killed daily, for those who are dying of communicable diseases, for those who are hungry, and so many other problems, for those who have to survive the inefficiencies of this government, for industries that are collapsing because we are mismanaging our foreign exchange, for so many of these problems, if you tell someone who's buying staple food at 3 times their monthly salary, that your mind is focused on how to structure your party for 2023, it shows that you're not concerned. What we are trying to do here is to say we need to be alive before 2023. And this government appears to have a serious problem of insularity. So if you don't give ideas and toss these ideas around in your mind and engage in these ideas, we are going to be in serious trouble. So many of the things we are doing as the shadow cabinet will be to propose solutions to places where they say there's no solution. You heard the Minister of Interior. He says, we've done everything that could be done, but the prisons are still being broken into. So he's saying that he's run out of ideas. He said, it's not for lack of trying, we've done everything. But we will say, what of this other thing? What of this other thing? You haven't done that. So our job is to come out. If you listen to someone like Tope Fashua, it doesn't have to be a central bank governor or Minister of Finance before you know that he has present solutions. So we should not hoard these solutions to ourselves and say, well, it's not our government, let them collapse. If they collapse, we all collapse. And if you look at it critically, the majority parties who are in opposition, they've abdicated their duty. There is no, for every issue, on every issue, that you fought the government, you cannot readily say, this is the PDP alternative, this is the ABGA alternative, this is the other party's alternative. So we have to step in and provide that. Because, for example, people are saying we shouldn't escalate the price of petroleum products to 300 and something. But what's the alternative? It's enough to say so. That's what ordinary citizens will say. But you who are interested in government, you must come out with a formulation, show how it can work, and will still retain the price that you have. So on many issues, on food security, on housing, on every aspect, we have solutions.
So your ultimate agenda is to take power in 2023?
That's correct.
And you are sure that that can happen?
It will happen only if the Nigerian people want it to happen. It's a power and desire for power is not the main issue. The main issue is to run a government that works. And if Nigerians know why this government doesn't work, many people are perplexed. You need to know how people assume. There was a time there was a rumor by some funny elements that the president was no longer there, and somebody else was there. Why did he have currency? Because people could not rationalize. that a person whom they had known over the years, who has a certain character, who is incorruptible, who loves the poor, is presiding over this fiasco. So you tell them where the money is no more there and some other character is there, they will believe it. But we know the reason why. What we are coming out tonight is to bring rationality into the question of our problem, to rationalize and say the reason why these folks can't balance the budget is that they don't know how to write a budget.
So we'll be hoping to see policy statement from you in the coming days?
Periodically.
Right.
And there's nothing, you cannot be effective in managing a political process if there is no balance, convergence between the knowledge that's available to, and the data available to the government in power and to the government that's possibly going to be formed in the future. Those are the things that we are trying to balance in having this shadow cabinet. It's not that we are going to be raising taxes, we are going to be blowing siren on the street, or we are going to be exercising political power now, but we're exercising our intellect.
It only has intellectual force, but it doesn't have the force of law.
It has, it has the force of law in the sense that we have the right. For example, I would recommend to the government, in spite of whatever you might feel about it, that it is in their best interest, actually, to take advantage of what we are bringing forward, to try to ameliorate some of the errors that they've committed. However, the main thing is for Nigerians to not lose hope. You see, it's one thing to lose hope in a government, but it's a calamity to lose hope in your governmental process as a whole, or lose hope in your government.
We'll see how
that is what we are trying to prevent.
Yeah, when people get into power and they say, we didn't know that things are this bad.
It will not happen to us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Adebayo Adewale, for coming tonight. Member of the NCF, the National Consultative Forum. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Let's switch gears now and see what is happening in the People's Democratic Party. Naturally, the Uche Secondus led National Working Committee of the PDP is bowing out. There was a valedictory session for that NWC, but in the absence of Prince Uche Secondus at the headquarters of the PDP in Abuja. Well, there are a lot of things that have been said. In the wings of waiting, the Senator Iyocha Ayu-led NWC elect. Take a listen to part of what was being said, some of the members of the outgoing NWC of the PDP, what they said at a valedictory session.
Let me leave this with us, that we must remember, when we think about the Uche Secondus and Akinwumi leadership of the People's Democratic Party, that we brought a situation to this party where Ghana must go came to an end. It must be in our record. We gave this party the opportunity to its members that if you fight at the grassroots and you won your election in the primary, nobody can come to Wadata and change names. We achieved that. I believe Governor Obaseki owe it to Nigerians. He also owe it to us to clear the air about those words, tax collectors. We did not collect tax, we didn't ask, and none was given. If there was anything that Governor Obaseki gave to us, was a thank you that he wrote on his cap, and also gave to his deputy, and gave to his chairman in the state, and came to this very hall to thank the NWC.
I want to place on record that as deputies, we met officially with the former chairman, Prince Uche Secondus, only 3 times. Our complaints for engagements were rebuffed. Hope to serve were dashed, and we were rendered inconsequential. I therefore, on behalf of my colleagues, want to call for a constitutional review of what we have as a constitution in this party. Please, the position of deputies is either scrapped entirely or some roles assigned to them. It is considered an act of foolishness for a daughter to teach her mother how to rear children. Still, I want to advise our former chairman, Prince Uche Secondus, that there's time for everything. Time to sow and time to reap. Time to laugh, time to cry. Time to fight and time to let go. I pray to God to guide him right. Advice for incoming national chairman. Sir, God will guide you through. Be just and fair and seek the guidance of God in whatever you do. Our system in PDP that enthrones you can remove you. It is our style in PDP. People who shout Hosanna today can shout crucify him tomorrow.
Well, that is Duran Odeyemi, the outgoing deputy publicity secretary of the PDP, and before him was Kola Ologbodiyan, the publicity secretary of the PDP. Now, the Secondus era is gradually winding down, albeit there is a Supreme Court case that is in the cooler, how that pans out. But let's get some views from an experienced member of the PDP, a member of the House of Representatives, Honorable Fred Agbedi from Bayelsa State. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, great pleasure, Shevin. Good evening, and good evening to Nigerians and viewers.
How would you assess the Secondus era of your party?
I think, to start with, he did his best for the party. You know that from where we were in the last election, we had about 18 states through his leadership in the general election. He took the party around the nation. And of course, at some point, some internal challenges set in. And that brought us to where we are. But what one can generally tell you is that PDP is a party that has come of age. From what we see the PDP did in the Secondus crisis. You remember I was one of the persons on your program when the crisis were, looming. And I did make a recommendation at the end of that, discourse. And I said that there was no need to chase anyone out. Rather, there should be early convention and then let new ESCO be elected and then be sworn in. Let the procedures, be properly followed. And the day after, I think there was NEC meeting, there was caucus meeting and all that. And it was as if we had that interaction, before the program. So the party followed that through, which clearly shows that the PDP has come of age. And I'm happy that we are procedural in what we are doing.
This has happened before. This is not the first time. It looks like deja vu. Whatever you see in the PDP, especially when you see crises over the leadership of the party. Mr. Secondus is not quite happy with what is happening. He's in the Supreme Court trying to get the interpretation of the Apex Court on what happened, how he was removed at the ward level and all of that. That's not the first time. We've seen it happen in other in the APC. We saw that similar situation happen. But the question is that whenever you see this happen in the PDP, it always backfires. Do you fear any kind of reprisal?
Well, sure. I've been a NEC member of this party since 2005 to date. I've been a NEC member. And I don't know what you mean by backfire.
It does backfire.
I don't know.
You remember what happened in the Muhazu era?
No, you see,
remember what happened in the Adu era?
We lost election. I don't understand what you mean by backfire.
When you have leadership crisis,
you lost election, you lost election.
In reality, I know you're a very modest person, but I mean, truth.
This is not
the facts are sacred. When you have a leadership crisis and the following day you lose elections, when you have leadership crisis and you have exodus out of your party, isn't that kind of backfiring?
Shehu, let me tell you, wherever you find a number of people together, there's bound to be disagreement, there's bound to be crisis. And when there is crisis, how do the people manage their crisis? The laws allows for internal process of resolution of disagreements. Where the internal process cannot give succor or the aggrieved person don't feel that he is not being served justice, he can go to the regular courts. That's what Secondus has done. Whether he's going to have what he wants at the regular court or not is a different ball game entirely. But I can quicken to tell you that the party is not undermining what he's doing. The party, I know up till tomorrow, has an avenue of reaching out to our former chairman, Prince Uche Secondus, just to ensure that we should be together to win 2023. 23. And there's nothing wrong about
that. As a
that.
party, has a party learned from the Secondus era, or whatever that has come out of the old issue?
You see, when you say if the party has learned, what did I say? I said the PDP has come of age. No, that is why from when the crisis began to the convention, to after the convention, and then the processes that the party is adopting to ensure that the new executive comes on stream at the right time. They are not just sworn in after election as it used to be, but there are certain induction trainings that are being conducted, to abreast these newly elected people with the means and ways of running a political party. Is intended to strengthen the party and to ensure that the banana peels that some people fell into as national chairman, as members of national executive in previous ESCOs should not repeat itself.
You don't see that some of the banana peels are still lying ahead, or the landmines?
Well, you see, like you said, Secondus is in the Supreme Court and all that. That is his right. There's nothing wrong about that. But I told you again that the party is not lying low about it. While Secondus is in Supreme Court, the party and leaders of the party are still making overtures to ensure that, we will resolve these issues and move on. Whatever it is, a judgment is going to come. You remember, a day to the convention, judgments were expected. On the day of convention, judgments were expected, and they came, and the party moved on. So in this same strength, the party will move on when the judgment comes. You see, when you look at the issues being canvassed, he is asking for the court to protect his rights. Asking for the court to protect your right has to do with whether your right at the time was valid, whether it is still valid, or it can be validated.
And you don't think that the outcome of the Supreme Court can destabilize the party?
Nobody knows what the Supreme Court is going to say.
The question
but for us as a party, we feel that we have moved on. We feel that Secondus will come on board with us as a former chairman of the party, as one of us. He will come to strengthen the party whenever these issues are clear, either through the court or through the other medium of interaction and dialogue.
As the leader of the party, the Senator Uche Ayu led NWC elect will be coming on stream if they are inaugurated on the 9th or on the 10th, as I'm understanding. What is the biggest lesson that they need to learn?
Of course, the biggest lesson is to ensure that you give a level playing ground to everybody. You interact with all and sundry that is in the party. You listen to party members, and you make sure that at all times you are on the same platform with them. I know Senator Uche Ayu was my Senate president in 1992 when we were in the National Assembly. He was in the Senate, I was in the House of Reps. He's an intellectual. He's a man that has traversed several routes. He's a man who is knowledgeable. He's a humble person. Even by his appearance and self-conduct, you know that he's a humble person. And for you to lead, if you lead with humility, if you lead with understanding of the issues, if you lead with understanding of human perspectives and behavior, you will be able to galvanize.
And will he be able to galvanize, or that NWC is able to galvanize the party to victory?
With the support of all of us around him, with the support of all of us around him.
He's a popular candidate for the party.
Of course he is.
You'll be able to win election 2023?
Let me assure you.
Is there hope?
Let me assure you that Nigerians are looking onto one party alone, and that is the PDP. You know why? The PDP led this country for 16 years. They have seen the difference between the 16 years and the almost 7 years that we are into. They have seen the difference. They have also known that if you made mistakes before and you come back to power, you will know how to correct the mistakes you have done before. So the only tested party that can lead Nigeria from tomorrow in 2023 is PDP. You know, I know that people are talking about third force, this force, we have that. You see, to win an election, to prosecute a national election from a point of opposition, it's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing. You must have understanding. You must have the structures. And PDP has the structures down to the community ward levels. And that is why we are very confident.
We'll see how that plays out.
We'll work much harder than we did before, and then we'll get...
we wish you good luck. You had that good luck on the ballot at some point, and we wish you good luck yet again. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Honorable Fred Agbede, leader of the PDP, and of course a member representing PDP, Bayelsa State in the House of Representatives. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I appreciate it. Well, that's our show for today, everyone. Many thanks for watching. Bye-bye.